I'm Dr. Nicole Lipkin, and this is the Hey Kiddo podcast where we talk about all things parenting. Today, I'm really excited. We're speaking with Marissa Green, the creator of Work Life Reimagined, a work-life design program for working parents. Marissa draws on 20 years of building organizational culture through human-centered design to help working parents rethink balance in a modern world and use creative intention to build a work-life design that helps the whole family thrive. Marissa, we're so excited to have you on the Hey Kiddo podcast to talk about
Thank
this.
you. I'm so excited to be here. This is one of my
Yeah,
favorite topics, and to apply it to the whole family and help kids thrive, I'm very excited to talk about it.
it's so exciting. I want to start with a burning question that I don't understand. What is work-life? Well, what is work-life balance? Let's start there. I meant to say what is work-life design, but what is
But
work-life balance? Let's
what
start
is
there.
work-life balance? Well, first of all, it's a joke. It's a joke.
Total joke.
It's not real anymore. I don't know that it was ever real. But in my experience, and when I talk to my clients and all the different parents that I work with, basically what we're learning in today's modern society, especially, is that we've been set up to fail. The whole idea and visual of balance makes us think that there's two sides of an equal coin. We put work on one side, we put life on the other side, and our goal is to try to figure out how to get that to just stay even and be balanced. And as you and I both know, and all working parents know, there is no way to have that 50-50 balance really ever. It is an ebb and a flow,
Yeah.
a roller coaster. It changes every day, changes with every season of our kids' lives. And so I say it's a joke. I say it's like
Yeah.
balance is not actually real. That's not what we're striving for. When we do work-life design, it is not to strive for balance. It's really to design from an intentional place. How do you go through those ebbs and flows? And how are you going to make intentional choices every day that work for you and your family?
Right. I love that. I literally have never, in the 20 plus years that I've been doing this work as a clinical and organizational psychologist, I literally have never understood that term because I
Right.
don't understand why work is separate from life. Like work is for it's so much part of our identity. For
Mm-hmm.
it's such a big part of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
I've never understood why it fell on opposite ends. Like, and it's
Right.
for those of us that choose to be working parents, when we can learn to do it in a way that whatever meets our design, like how we want to
Mm-hmm.
intentionally
Mm-hmm.
show up, it's a great thing to model for our kids. So
It
I've
is.
never understood why they're opposite ends of the spectrum. Makes no
Well,
sense.
and I think when we put them at opposite ends of the spectrum, something happens, and that identity piece is really, really important. So one thing that's been coming up in my work with people is I'm starting to realize that, especially for working moms, something happens, used to be physically when we would go into an office. Now it's a little bit more
Yeah.
philosophically when you show up on a Zoom call or whatever it might be. There's almost a shedding of the personal parenthood identity. So if I keep imagining people walking into an office and all of a sudden, like, the baby rattle, the bottle bag, the yoga sweats, whatever, kind of fall off. And as you walk into the office, you put on this whole other persona to go into the office. And the opposite happens when you come out of the office. Like, your suit comes off, you put in all these other things, and all of a sudden you're in a different world playing a different role. And when we look at things like balance, 50-50 work and life, as two separate things, our identities also become two separate things. And we're kind of caught between these two worlds. And my whole goal in this work-life design is to help more people get to what you're describing. How do
Right.
we actually look at the two together and have one identity that works in both places? Because our energy is zapped because we're trying to be too many different people in too many different places, and it is all one life. It's not work and
Right.
life. It's all one
Well,
life.
I love that you're saying that because that's the other thing. It's like, what is the workplace persona? Like, are you, unless you have a psychological disorder where there
Maybe
are
that's
multiple
my problem.
personalities, like you are showing it is part of who you are, and to expend the energy trying to stuff it or keep it
Right?
compartmentalized is really hard. Like I remember I used before COVID, traveling a ton. I just
Yeah.
traveled a ton, but I would also be in New York at least once a week with
Okay.
clients. And I would drive there
Mhm.
and be having conference calls, pumping.
Mhm.
Like I will never forget having conference calls, pumping
On the
through the
call.
tunnels.
Yeah. Oh,
Everyone
uh-huh.
saw my boobs. Like being
Right?
in like public bathrooms, pumping, like just doing
Yes.
it where I had to do it. Like that, I
Yeah.
didn't all of a sudden, once I was with clients, turn that off. Like that was
It's part
it
of what,
just
yes.
it's
But
part of what that life was at that point.
right, right. And what's interesting though is I think only over the past maybe, well, especially since COVID, but probably even the past 8 years, has that become more acceptable, right? That
Hmm.
where the idea of a woman pumping in a conference room or bringing her baby to work as a newborn, like
Right.
people did not do that before. People, I have several colleagues, people who were leaders and kind of helped mentor me through my
Yeah.
career who would say, I didn't tell anyone in my job about my divorce because I didn't want my personal life to show up at work. Or I was really struggling with some, development or social emotional needs for my kid. And I needed more support, but couldn't talk to anybody about it at work.
Yeah.
And that's not okay. We shouldn't have to stuff that down. We shouldn't have to leave that at the door. And
Right.
I'm all about boundaries and ensuring that you don't have to disclose things you don't want to disclose. But in our workplaces, when we expect so much of our employees, we also should be able to create an environment where people can show up authentically and recognize that there is life outside of work and it does
Right.
impact how we show up.
And it also impacts the bottom line for businesses when you
Yeah,
take care of the whole
the
person
whole person.
and recognize that there's different parts of our identity. Like
Mhm.
there's different parts. Some are transient, some, and it's interesting because the different parts of our identity at different parts of our life compete.
Right.
Like during COVID, like the role of
Yes.
parent versus the role of employee, or different phases in our life when we become parents, when we
Hmm.
become grandparents, or if we get sick.
Yeah.
There's turmoil in that competition.
There's extreme tension. And I think that's the part about the design that's also really important is in the same way that like balance is never consistent, your design is never perfect. Like there will be
Mm.
a day that the boundaries get completely blurred. And like my favorite example of that is when you've got a big meeting or you're like sometimes for me I do a lot of workshops, so I know I'm on in a workshop and I get the text, your kid's sick, she forgot something, like whatever happened where then the lines get blurred and all of a sudden 5 minutes before your workshop you're like, okay, who's on point, like who's going to take the thing, or
Yeah.
and so it's never going to be perfect. And so it's also that idea of letting go of the concept that we have to always get it right too, that we've got to
Hmm.
be that we're never going to fully be present as a parent. This is kind of, I don't know if I even want to say this, but I'm going to like throw it out there.
Say it.
We're never going to be fully present as a parent, and we're also never going to be fully present as a employee or an entrepreneur or a person working when you're trying to do both at the same time. And I think we have to create space and grace for that to be true. Like to be
Hmm.
human and to not be perfect in either place, but do our best every single day to make it work.
Well, you're speaking the truth. And I think that, and I want to dive into to work-life design a little bit more and understand fully what that is. But I think I'm gonna say something I probably shouldn't say either.
Mhm. Go for
But
it.
I think we should, I mean,
Truth
I
bombs
think that's
today.
the
That's what
truth.
this is.
This is the
Yes.
truth.
Yes.
I think our pursuit, our like this the strength-based movement, for example,
Mm.
was a
Mhm.
great movement,
Mm. Mhm.
but we took it in a direction that's
Mhm.
not realistic. Like
Mhm.
you can't just focus on your strengths and ignore your weaknesses, because your
Mhm.
weaknesses become an Achilles heel.
Sure.
Like I might be the most, compassionate, empathetic person, but if I am compassionate, empathetic,
You
but I'm
are.
also
You are.
super impatient. And you're not going to remember my compassion and empathy when I'm being super impatient to you. Like
Mm.
I can't just ignore that. And I
Mm.
think So I think we took the strength-based movement in a different direction than it was intended, but I also think we took the positive psychology movement in a direction that was not intended. Like, you know, the chronic or toxic positivity, or you can have it all, or we should
Uh-huh.
strive to be happy all the time. Like,
Mhm.
the reality is as humans, we have a range of emotions. And if you were happy all the time, literally all the time,
Mhm. You're not
there would be
mhm,
something wrong with you.
mhm. You're not feeling your feels. It's not possible
No.
to. And I love what you just said too. We can have it all. We can do it, it created this environment where it was just, I think it made all of us feel like, oh, this is tough. It made all of us feel like you could have it all.
Yeah.
And in that, that then became the expectation. And so, as more and more people are starting to realize that the idea of having it all in the way that it's currently framed, which is, masterful career, amazing family, uh, also balanced as a human and happy all day, every day. When people start to fall from grace, realizing that that isn't reality and that isn't possible,
Yeah.
that's when the shame, the guilt, that
Yes.
you start to think that there's something wrong with you. And
Something wrong.
social media has created this environment. Now, it's a twofold. In one way, it's created an environment where you're watching everyone represent all the best of their lives, which then makes you feel that gap even more when you don't have all that
Right.
happiness or all that, you know, a work and
Right.
life are 100% balanced
Your
for
house
me.
isn't beautiful.
Right,
Yeah.
your house is yeah, immaculate, right? But on the flip side, I think it's also created a space where we can have truth bombs and real dialogue
Yeah.
about the difficulty. And I think that's starting to shift so that people are starting to realize, and I believe this, I believe you can have it all. I just think you have to decide what all is for you. You
Right.
can't you can't have it all in the way that it's been dictated to us today, but you've got to decide for you what is that. And there is no right answer to that. Like there
Yeah.
is no shame or guilt to feel about whatever all is for you. For some people, all is being with their kids all the time.
Yeah.
For some people, all is a part-time job and picking their kids
Hmm.
up at 3. For others, it's like all in on a business and your partner's taking care of the kids. And so any one of those are a great intentional choice, and that can be all for you. It's
Right.
just you got to own whatever that is for yourself and not worry about what it might mean to anybody else, because it's your family that matters the most. It's helping your family thrive. That's the most important.
So talk about the intentionality, because you're leaning
Mhm.
into that right now, around work life design and what it is, and how you craft it and cultivate it.
Okay, so this one's a little bit tough because in order to be intentional, you have to be willing to see the reality of what things are. And I think with most of my clients, they'll come to me with usually a work related thing that they think they need help with. It's either I need to grow my capacity so I can get a promotion, or gosh, I'm really bad at time management and I need help finding balance because I'm bad at managing my time. And most of the time, what we find is that underneath it all, it's not so much that people are bad at time management. It's not so much that they don't have capacity for the promotion. It's that they just aren't being intentional about what they really want their work and life experience to be like. And in most cases, people have gotten to a place. This is, of course, just with my clients. This is not a standard statement for everyone in the world.
Yeah.
But people have gotten to a place where work has crept in and has become the thing that they are intentional about. And life becomes whatever fits in around it.
Mm.
And so what we work on is taking a look at the whole picture and saying, from a creative space and from a human-centered design space, which means your family, you get to choose. I really encourage people to put themselves first and in the center. And so for a
Yeah.
lot of people, that's really hard to like say,
Very
okay,
hard. Hmm.
me and what I want. So there's also an option to do it like for your family unit. But the whole concept of human-centered design is that you put the person or the group of people who you want to design for in the center. And for a lot of my clients, that's like their biggest aha, because they come in with a problem that is focused on work and wanting to grow a capacity or do something to shift what they're doing at work. And when we start to put them at the center or their family at the center, all of a sudden the design changes. All the things that are happening around them, the perspective shifts. And so that intentionality is all about being willing to see what reality is, putting yourself and your family at the center, and then designing around that. Now, look, I'm a realist. In some workplace circumstances, you can't 100% design for your family at the center. So then those become bigger questions and, bigger things to uncover in terms of what people really want. And are they in situations that can support the design that they really want to have? But the intentionality really comes with the willingness to open our eyes and see what life looks like with our family at the center, or yourself at the center, in a best case scenario.
Right. It's a very interesting way of looking for things, and it's very hard. I'm curious why you think, in your experience, people come identifying the work problems first, or people tend to put the work first.
I think that they are easier to see. It's harder to see. Okay, let's take burnout for an example, right? And I'm not a burnout expert, so you can check me on this if I'm right about this or not, because I think you know it better than I do from a clinical standpoint. But in my personal experience of burnout, I didn't even notice it was happening until it was already manifesting in my body. Now, I went to a coach and a therapist before it was manifesting in my body, but the thing I went to them for was, I'm really struggling with managing everything I have on my plate. Like, I'd really love some help getting more organized, or I'd really love to grow my, whatever, like basically help me get a promotion because I can't manage what I've got on my plate and I want to get, farther. I didn't even realize the impact it was having on my body. Oh, sorry. I didn't realize.
It's like that news. Remember that guy that was on news and BBC or something? And the little kid comes in the back.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. Can I answer her question?
Of course, please.
Sloan, what's up? She has a fever. She's sick today.
Oh, Sloan.
Oh, thank you. Look at this.
Oh, hi.
Princess. Oh my gosh. It's
So
Nicole.
sweet.
Did you say hi?
Hi, Sloan. Sorry you're
honey.
not feeling well.
She says, sorry, you're not feeling well. So anyway, you don't even notice that the real issue is happening to you, because I was so focused on, how do I get better at my job? How do I manage my time better? How do I get more organized? And then all of a sudden the burnout started manifesting in my body. And then the other thing that I started to notice, and this one's hard, is, and relatable for all you Hey Kiddo folks, is I didn't even realize also how that was rippling into my family until 2 years later. Like, I can look back now that I've been on the journey that I've been on and done the work that I've done, thought about what intentional design looks like for our lives, which is different all the time. I can look back and be like, holy cow, like these moments, I start to remember these moments and like what my interactions were like with the kids.
Like what?
Like, okay, I'll give you a great example. Yeah, no, this is great. Scott and I, that's my husband, we were like looking back at videos, and probably about 3 months before I started to have like headaches and the body manifestations of burnout, we had, during the pandemic, decided to go to Utah for a month. Sounded wonderful. It was wonderful. We had a great time. Worked in Utah while also having the 2 kids home with us. So we were both working. We had both the kids home with us, no help from other people. So it was insane. Let's be real. That was a completely ridiculous thing to do. We split our days. I worked from 6 to 12. He worked from 12 to 6. Then we tried to finish things up at night. Anyway, we were watching a video from that time. And the video is the kids dancing in the living room of this place that we had rented. I'm sitting on one couch, Scott's taking the video. And as this video goes on, you just, like, I completely check out. Like, I am not present whatsoever. At one point, I'm even like on my phone, but probably not really doing anything special on it. I was so at my max. I couldn't even be in the moment with them, and they were being so adorable. They were
Yeah.
so cute. They're dancing. And Emerson comes over at one point, puts her hand on my knee, and I don't even like check into her at all. And
Hmm.
so that now looking back, I mean, gosh, if I had seen that a year ago, I'd probably be like sobbing. But
Yeah.
you know, we do the best we can with what we've got in the moments, and we learn from them, and try to do better the next time. But
Right.
it shows up and you got to be willing to see it. And sometimes that's harder to see than the fact that you can't manage your time in the office.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think one of the things you're also, hitting on that's popping up in my brain as you're talking is I think a lot of us, well, look, globally, the entire world during the pandemic,
Yeah.
I don't think I think we minimize this.
Mm.
Like we all experience, and I know trauma is a very big loaded word. I I I get that. But we all collectively experienced trauma. And in fact, the psychological community coined pandemic trauma stress experience.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it's interesting that everyone
Mm.
experienced
Mhm.
because
Oh
we
yeah.
all had
Yeah.
stress experiences. Like I don't care if we're like, oh, I was fine, I was fine, I was fine. Just coping with
Mhm.
the grief, whether we lost someone or not, life changed.
Yeah.
And
In
just
a
and when
millisecond.
in a millisecond, and when things change, there's grief, there's loss. It was constant change and ambiguity, and we're not designed for that.
Mhm.
It was, the people that are in professions that care and help other people, it was dealing with other people's stuff, even if you're not, even if you were like entering, like, a software engineer behind a computer, like you're still
Mhm.
dealing with other people's stuff.
Yeah.
All of us collect, like one of those things can take down the human brain. All of us were
Right.
dealing with all of it. So
Yeah.
we all experience shifts, and that shutdown, it's very interesting
Mhm.
because I wonder what that would have looked like also, like
Mm.
if it happened 10 years ago or whatever, before, like if you had
Mm.
kids 10 years, whatever, like
Right. Right.
none of us got out of this unscathed, and
Right.
none of us went through it unscathed. And I
Right.
think that when we talk about shame and guilt and all of that, again, this is part of the human experience. These are emotions
Mhm.
that are part of the human experience. But we spend as adults so much time shoving down, like, why am I still feeling anxious? Why am I still feeling depressed?
Mm.
Why am I still feeling burned out?
Right.
Like, instead of just being like, I'm still feeling anxious. I'm
Still
still feeling,
feeling it.
but
Yeah.
the
Mm.
why and the shoving down and the hard to admit part as adults, why is it
Mhm.
still happening?
Mhm.
Well, it should still be happening. It's kind
Mhm.
of like I always equate what happened with the pandemic as a car accident. Like you get in a car accident, all of a sudden your nervous system spikes up, your adrenaline
Mhm.
spikes up. And it
Mhm.
isn't until you chill out, your body chills out, that you feel the pain and the emotional pain.
Right.
It's the same
Right.
with this. Like our body, like it's over, it's done. But this is when this stuff spikes up. But we're also living in a world where we're inundated with all this like kind of stuff,
Mm.
politics,
Right.
environment stuff.
It's
Our
constant.
brains are on constant high speed,
Mhm.
that like of course we're still feeling this, and of course the intentionality around our work life design is constantly shifting because we're
Yeah.
constantly also shifting.
Because we're shifting. Life changes every single day. And
Yes.
this is such a great point because they've been doing, during the pandemic, they did all these studies on burnout because everyone was burning
Hmm.
out. But they've continued a lot of them, and still 89% of workers say that they're still burnt out.
Yes.
And the funny thing is, I bet they were before the pandemic too,
Sure.
because in all of its difficulty and trauma, the pandemic also offered an opportunity for reflection
Yeah.
and an opportunity for also, I don't know if I'll go as far as saying a collective awakening. Like I don't mean to be
Hmm.
that like big with it,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it created an opportunity for people to reflect and recognize that things could be done differently. And
Yes.
I think we're also in this phase. Part of the reason that I love what you're saying about like feel it, be in it. It's okay if you still feel burnt out. It's okay if you still feel shame or guilt or whatever the things are, because you got to feel that stuff to figure
Yeah.
out what a creative next step might be. And if you're not even feeling what it feels like to experience reality or real life, you're going to just keep kind of staying on the hamster wheel because it feels comfortable.
Right.
Feels comfortable to just keep doing what I was always doing,
Yeah.
and not really recognizing or taking a deeper look to say, like, is it really working for me? Like,
Right.
is
Right.
it really working for me and my family? Am I like, you got to feel the pain so that you can recognize it, because otherwise you just kind of think everything's okay. And like, is an okay life okay? I don't know. I kind of want more than an okay life. I just want
Yeah.
a little.
But it's interesting what you're saying right now, because I think that, like, we get on that hamster wheel, we get on the stuffing, like, let's just stuff, I just got to get it
Yeah,
done, like,
just
as
get it done. Just
adults.
keep going. Well, and
And
sometimes
then,
that's all we have capacity for. I
and
mean,
that's totally,
yeah.
totally, totally. But I also think that with that, when our brains evolve like they did, like for
Mm,
all of us, again, recognizing the opportunity, also recognizing the stress experience, all of that, you know, when you use the same strategies to cope
mm,
and your world around you is different and your brain's
mm-hmm,
different, you're not going to get the same results. And I
mm-hmm,
think and again, it
mm-hmm.
makes sense that, like, when scary things happen and all of that, or we're feeling really bad, it makes sense that we dig into our old coping mechanisms.
Yes.
But when they don't work because things are different and we need to
Mm-hmm.
evolve our coping mechanisms, then we're like, why isn't it
Uh-huh.
working? But we have to allow, like, and this is where I think the toxic positivity and the
Right.
constant pursuit of happiness really messes us up,
Mm-hmm.
because maybe it should be the constant pursuit of feeling the feels.
Yes. Ooh, there's a
And then,
quote.
like,
Pull that one out.
yeah, pull that one
Pull
out.
that
And
one.
then, like, evolving, knowing that we have the power to evolve our thinking, and knowing that we have the power to evolve our coping mechanisms. Like, we're evolving till we die.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's great news.
Mm-hmm.
So we can
Yeah.
do differently. We can think
Yeah.
differently. And that ties into what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, and I want to ask about this. Like, how do you actually do the work of figuring out the family in the middle or you in the middle? Like,
Yeah.
how does
Yeah.
it happen?
So the approach that I take is all centered on taking a creative approach. So literally thinking of yourself as a designer. I believe that when we can put our minds and our brains into a creative space, we have a lot more freedom and a lot more, I don't know that I would say clinical term psychological safety, but we allow ourselves to think differently than when we are trying to solve a problem.
Okay.
And so the first thing that we do is spend a lot of time getting into a creative space and thinking, really thinking like a designer of your life. Like, I go through an exercise. The very first exercise that I do with my one-on-one clients is I have them go and do like a Pinterest board of all the life experiences that they want to have, the life
Hmm.
experiences that they would be excited to be part of, the life experiences that would help them feel the way that they want to feel. And
Like a
we,
vision board kind
like
of
a
thing.
vision board, but it's a little different in that the perspective that I ask them to take is not one of achievement. Like, it's not a vision
Hmm.
board to say, like, this is what I want my life to look like in 5 years, or this is what I want my life to look like at the end of this. It's literally a creative juices type of experience to say, how do you put your mindset in a place of what possibilities are? And don't
Hmm.
hold on to them yet. Don't let, that's not your design. Your Pinterest is not your design, but it's to get you in the creative space of feeling free and feeling safe to dream of the possibilities. And the one reason that that's a really important first step is most of the time when you ask someone what they want from a work-life design standpoint, there is an immediate deterrent after they say it. Well, I would love to like start my days at 10 o'clock, but gosh, that's not possible. My boss would never let me do that. I'd love to take a 2-week vacation this year and go to Europe, but I just don't have the time. I've got a huge project. You immediately go to a place of limitation, not immediately, but a lot of people go to a place of limitation because it doesn't feel possible. And so part of human-centered design, when you're doing it inside organizations or inside, community structures, is to do the discovery from a creative space. There's like photo design where you actually go around communities and take pictures and like discover from a place of creativity. And so I try to bring that into someone's life so that they can say, from a creative space and a place not of limitations, what could the possibilities be? And so we do that first. And then there is deeper coaching work and asking some of those questions around how do you unlock those limitations? Like that's a deeper set of work. You can't do that with a Pinterest board. But the Pinterest board creates a space and a place to like draw from to have those conversations. And then as you go through the process, the latter part of the process is really then starting to say with clarity, what are your non-negotiables?
Yeah.
The only way you can build a design is to understand what you will unapologetically build a boundary around. And you have to be willing to be unapologetic with the boundary. And I've found over time, I didn't know this right away for myself, and I also didn't know it right away for my clients, but you can't start with too many boundaries in too many places. They're too hard to hold. We've lived a life of saying yes to a lot of things. We've, been on that hamster wheel for a while. Like you can't all of a sudden just walk in and be like,
nope,
I put a box around every single thing in my life. And so we start small and we start with the ones that you can get comfortable
Give me
around.
an example.
So like I'll give two examples because I think it's important to show both sides. So example one, let's say I want to have dinner with my family every night at 5. That's a tough boundary. Like not
Very
not a
tough.
lot of people can like make that happen. So you could have your boundary or your non-negotiable be, I want to have dinner with my family every night at 5. Or you could say, I'm going to have dinner with my family at 5 one night a week. And I'm going to practice and be intentional about setting that boundary so that people understand that it's important to me. And so it becomes something that you communicate to your team. It becomes something you have an out of office on in your email. Like the follow through of the intentionality is actually what's more important than the like saying the boundary itself. Because what I find, especially in workplaces, is that in most cases, if you are reasonable with what your boundary is, like going to dinner at 5 one night a week is pretty reasonable. Like people will respect the boundary, but if you communicate it to them, if you don't remind them and tell them every Wednesday, this is my night for dinner with my family, they're going to put a meeting on your calendar at 5 o'clock. And if you don't have an out of office, they're going to expect you to show up at that meeting at 5 o'clock. And so you have to hold the boundary. But I find that if you can pick one thing, do it small, do it really well, and get comfortable with realizing that people will respect your boundaries, then you can start expanding it. Then it can be, okay, I'm going to do it on Friday too, or I'm going to do something different for myself in the morning, go to the gym and show up at work at 9:30. I also want to show the flip side though, because I think this is really important. Our kids learn to respect them too. And as working parents, it can't always be about setting a boundary or a non-negotiable with work. Sometimes it also has to be about setting a boundary or a non-negotiable with our families. And that those are sometimes harder, right? They're children. Like my daughter just like came in, she delivered me coffee, which was amazing, but it could have been like, Mommy, I need something.
Mommy, I need you.
Mommy,
Right.
And so those are harder to hold, but equally important to set and communicate. So if it's something like every Saturday, I need to be able to wake up later and like have some of my own time to reset and get ready for the weekend. First of all, it's a perfectly respectable boundary to have. So many parents think I worked all week, I got to wake up and be on. The second my kids wake me up on Saturday morning. Not true. Don't have to. They'll be fine. Tell them they can be on their iPad, tell them to read a book, whatever it is. You cannot come in my bedroom until 8 o'clock. This is not a boundary I have, but I have clients who do have this boundary. And so you do the same thing. You have to remind them every Saturday at 8 o'clock. They're going to come in, but you remind them and you reset the boundary. But that practice of the reminding and holding it unapologetically, that's what allows you to be able to realize that the boundaries are possible, that people will respect them, and everyone will be okay. But you can't take on too many all at once. Like, you're not going to be able to do like a life overhaul, day one of your
Right.
work-life design, because they're hard to hold. I mean, you do this work,
Yeah.
boundaries are
They're
hard to hold.
extremely
So,
hard to hold. They're
yeah.
extremely hard to hold. But what I love that you were talking about before too, and thank you for these examples, is the limitations, like our
Mhm.
mindset of limitation and like
Mhm.
kind of how we immediately go there. It's really interesting. And you know, I think especially limitations that we set around the boundaries that we set with our families. And again, limitations tend to be rooted in guilt and shame.
Yes. Yes. And we're full of it. We're full of
Full
it.
of it.
And to your point, yes, I've been thinking about this while we're also talking, this idea of like feeling our feelings, right? Feeling
Feeling the feels.
sadness, feeling pain, and and I don't know if this is true, but I now am wondering and have a hypothesis around. I think part of the need for us as parents is to find a way to take the shame and guilt and move it to the underlying emotion that we feel about whatever the experience is. And most of the time, what I find, if I'm feeling like a shame or a guilt about, I've been traveling a lot. My work life design right now does not look super balanced. It's
Yeah.
been a lot, but there's like a bit meta level balance that happens throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
So in these times that are really busy, I do feel like shame and I kind of feel guilt when I'm leaving, but when I go underneath it, it's actually because I'm sad and I miss my kids.
Yeah.
Like, or it's because I think someone else might judge me for what I'm doing.
Mm.
And like, then if you can get underneath it, then you can start to decide which things you actually want to hold on to and feel and which things you want to let go of. And like holding on to a feeling of sadness because I miss my kids, that feels a whole lot better than feeling shameful for being away. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can sit in
Completely.
that. I can sit in the
Completely.
sadness. I can be sad
Yep.
the whole plane ride. I can look at
Yep.
pictures of them the whole plane ride and be like, God, I miss them.
Yep.
Kind of sucks that I have to be away,
Yep.
but it is
But
what
I
it
do.
is. Yeah, I do. I can't,
You know,
you know,
while you were saying that, also sometimes there's two things I just wrote down. First, sometimes the shame and the guilt comes from our cognitive distortions, which are normal ways that
mm,
our brains, like the way
protect us.
the
Hmm.
way we, yeah, they're normal. They protect us, but they interfere with thinking clearly, and our thinking affects how we feel.
Hmm.
So, oh, I should be home, or,
Right.
I am not being a good mother, or I'm not being a good
Hmm.
father, or whatever it might be, because XYZ.
Hmm.
It's our distortions in our head a lot of
Yes.
times that create this. And I do think, again, when we allow ourselves to feel the feels and really get to it,
Hmm.
we can also allow ourselves to think about what's at the root of it. Like, what is
Yeah.
our thinking pattern
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
creating this? And
Yes.
dig. And
Yeah.
I always love this technique in working with companies, like the why, like asking
Mm.
yourself why
The 5 whys.
seven times, or
Hmm.
is it five whys, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Or
just
7.
go,
I don't
go,
know.
go, go. I don't know what it is,
Yeah.
but go, go, keep going, keep going,
Hmm.
keep going. You also mentioned, and I think this is a biggie, you mentioned judgment. You mentioned judgment, and it feels like that's a biggie. And like, the as humans, we're so self-focused. Even those of us
Right.
that don't feel it, we're very self-focused and think everyone's
Think
looking at
everybody
us,
else is looking at us when in
paying
reality
attention.
they're worrying about what I might be thinking about them. Like,
Right.
it's so silly. Yeah.
Right, because no one has time to pay attention to anyone
No.
else. But like,
No.
but there is, I mean, let's talk about the judgment and work life, the
Mm.
the intentionality that you set. I think there are camps, like the stay-at-home mom
Mhm.
versus the working mom.
Mhm.
And there seems like it always like reminds me of, like, you know, what's it called? West Side Story.
Right, like
Like the two gangs.
on the
Yeah.
playground, the like stay-at-home moms versus the like mom who just got back from the office. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's true. It's
Yeah.
true.
It's like,
You know,
let's dive into that a little bit.
Okay, this one's really hard for me because, especially since leaving corporate and doing my own consulting and starting the coaching, it's like been an identity crisis again. Like what, oh, wait a minute, which camp am I in now? Like, I don't know which side of the, am I the Jet or the, what are they?
I
Whatever.
don't know. I don't remember.
East
I
Side
don't
of West
remember.
Side Story. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know whose team I'm on. And what's been interesting as I've had more and more conversations with especially working mom, or not working moms, all mothers, all
All
mothers.
moms.
Also, I do believe moms who stay at home are also working. They have like, they're the
Yes.
CEO of their family,
Whew.
like have a whole, a whole thing. So I even struggled when I started doing this, like, what do I call moms working in an office, because it could make other stay-at-home moms feel like they don't have a job, and that's not true.
Right.
I got all in my head because I was worried about how this work was going to make other people feel, right?
Yeah.
And how it was going to make what judgments would be out there. And I think what I found in having all these different conversations, similar to what you just said about, we worry more about what everybody else might be judging us for or thinking about than the reality of what they're thinking about us. And I think the same is true for these moms on either side of the playground. The working mother is feeling all that guilt and shame because she thinks that like the stay-at-home mom might be judging her or looking at her differently. Similarly, a stay-at-home mom might be feeling, oh, I should be doing more, or gosh, da 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 da, because she thinks that's what a working mom might be thinking about her, when in reality, again, we're
No one's
really
thinking.
only focused on our own shit. Like, we're not,
Yep.
I'm not thinking about my friend who, is with her kids all day long. I'm not, I'm happy for you. I'm excited that you get to do
Right.
that. I think that's an amazing life choice. And I know she's not judging me for what I'm doing, but I'm
Right.
over here in my head like, oh gosh, she must think I'm a terrible mom because I didn't make, muffins yesterday for the kid's birthday or
Right.
whatever the thing is.
Right.
So it most of the times, to the same degree of limitations, we're in our own way.
We're
We're
in
the
our own
we
way.
are we are the ones standing in our way. But letting go of that feeling of being judged is really difficult.
I would also argue if we are thinking about our friend that is a stay-at-home mom or a working mom, and we are finding ourselves in a place of judgment, I would say that's very good information to explore.
I love that.
Because what
Like,
is it behind? Like if I'm feeling like you're staying at home and I'm sitting and judging you and I'm working my butt, well, am I not intentionally designing my life and feeling actually upset that I'm
yes,
not spending more time with my kid or whatever it might be? I think judgment is
right.
often rooted in, it should
And
be rooted in self-reflection.
yeah, I think that's great. I think there's a quote, and I'm not going to get it right. I'll botch it, but it's some kind of quote of like, jealousy shows us what we really hope for our own lives, something like that.
Totally.
And I think you could replace jealousy with judgment. I think yeah, that's such a good point. That
Yeah.
element of, if you're seeing something in someone else that makes you feel a certain way,
Yes.
it maybe it's because you're missing it in your own life.
It's a
Yeah.
big one. I think
Well, and
that's
that's part of
I
the,
think that's a topic we should explore another time.
I
I think
love
it's a
that.
big, it's
Love
a
it.
biggie.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about with work life, with setting the intentions, with designing your work life the way you want to
Mhm.
and the way you can. How does this impact kiddos?
So I'll speak first from my own experience because
Yeah.
I feel most rooted in it, and not being like a clinical psychologist, I don't want to comment on that part. So let me tell you my experience, and then let's unpack what you think that means, how
Yeah.
that might ripple for other families. So in my experience, what I've seen is my our ability to be connected as a family significantly grew when we got intentional about putting, I did
Mm,
start it first with me in the middle. To be frank, that's why I'm a big believer that as parents we need to put ourselves in the middle first and take care of ourselves first, and everything else will ripple.
yeah.
Throughout the journey, though, after putting myself in the middle, we started to do it collectively as a family and put the whole family in the middle. And the shift in our ability to connect has been the biggest and greatest impact, I think, on the kids. So that's not only my ability to be present, but actually our ability as a family to protect our time, like to protect the things that are important to us,
Yeah.
to protect our moments of connection to ensure that, if we say we're going to do dinner at 5, we darn do our best to be together to do the dinner at 5. 5's unrealistic. 6 o'clock. Let's go back to 6.
Yeah.
But
early bird special comes a little later.
right. But the other part about it, so I would say, like, number one, the ripple effect to the kids is just a deeper, better connection as a family. Now, you could probably talk about what that then means, clinically for their development and social emotional well-being.
Of course.
Like, it's you got to
anyone
have
can
that
talk
connection.
about that. It's obvious that it helps.
Right. It helps. I think the other thing that has been fascinating for me that I was not expecting, and that I've seen in a couple of my clients as well, that have been like farther along the journey, because this takes time. Like, you can get a new design in, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks, whatever. Like, we could put it down on paper, but actually putting it into life and like doing the roller coasters and redesigning a couple times, like that takes a couple years. You're not going to feel the full effects for a while. So if you want a quick fix, this is not your jam, but what I've noticed over the past couple of years and doing it consistently and having the conversations with the kids is that they start to become owners of their own design too. They start to communicate and articulate what they want. Mom, Dad, I'd really love to just have downtime this weekend. Mom, you've been traveling a lot. Can we just have our own day, on Saturday? Or, hey, they hold me accountable too. They'll be like, you said that we were gonna blah, blah, blah. It was part of what you told us and part of your design. You got to do it. And like, that has been like magic, because all of a sudden it isn't just about what Scott and I sitting and putting the kids and their family in the middle and making all these decisions. It's actually like we as a unit are owning our power and designing what we want work life to look like. And this expands beyond just like how we manage our time. This is about like deciding what kind of vacations we want to take, deciding how we spend our summers, deciding, like, it goes beyond, so that really what you're curating is this holistically intentional life, not just, oh gosh, I got to fit life around work. You start to make these bigger decisions.
That is huge what you just said. So basically, you are teaching the life. I mean, one of the impacts that I'm hearing from your daughters is that they're learning how to set boundaries. They're learning how to build accountability in themselves and hold others accountable.
Yes.
And
let
those
them
are,
do it at
let
6
them
and 8 and not 2. Like,
and
every once in a while, like, you'll love this. Every once in a while, there'll be this moment where they're like really negotiating for something. Now, sometimes it's candy, like, not always like a big life moment, but sometimes they're negotiating for something that, like, okay, they really put thought behind this. This is like meaningful to them. They're negotiating for it. We got to like move things around, to make it happen. And holy cow, if in those moments I'm not like, what have I done? What have I done? Like, this is so hard. Like, it just made my life harder. But then, and in those moments, usually Scott can tell, he could like see the words coming across my brain, and he'll just be like, we designed it this way.
We designed it this way.
We designed it this way. And this is what we wanted. We didn't know this is what we wanted for them. We did it for us first. We really did.
I love this.
But like,
I love it.
Yeah, the impact has definitely been for them.
So, okay, wrapping up, what are the top 5 things? I could talk to you for hours, and we will. What are the top 5 things that you want listeners to take away?
Okay, I love this. I love that you ask these top 5 things at the end. Okay, so 1, work-life balance is a joke, so just let it go. As much as you can, let go that idea of like the 50-50 balance. I think go ahead and sit in the idea that when you're burnt out, it does have an impact on your family.
Yes.
That sucks. That hurts. That's like sitting in the pain a little bit. Like, shit, it does. But use that as fuel to start making the intentional decisions that you need in order to be able to help yourself and your family. And so with that, I would say, I wasn't sure if I was going to read the quote, but I'll read the quote. What you focus on grows, what you think about expands, and what you dwell upon determines your destiny, by Robin Sharma. And the thing I like about this is that whole idea of oftentimes our focus is really work, because sometimes that feels easier than focusing on all of the other things coming at us in life, and especially the difficulty of parenting. But just remember that what you focus on is what's going to grow. So if you're, how do you balance? balance? How do you create an intentional design where you're really focusing on the things that are most important to you? Like, it's okay if work is your priority. Be
Mhm.
intentional about that being your priority, and make a decision about whether that's what you really want or not. I think the work-life design boundaries can create safety for the whole family. Like, you can really be the one to help your kids learn how to create those boundaries, and it enables you to create connection and safety inside your families. And then just slow down,
Yeah.
slow down. Sometimes we're running so fast, it's not even possible for us to feel the feels or understand that we're burnt out or recognize that we're jealous of the person who has more time
Yeah.
vacationing or whatever. Or if
Yeah.
you're a person who works part-time and you're feeling jealous about someone's career, like, feel that, slow down
Yeah.
enough to recognize that you want something different so that then you can get into a creative space to design it the way that you really want it to be.
Oh, this is amazing. Marissa, thank you so much for being
It
on the
was
Hey
so
Kiddo
fun. Thank
podcast.
you
This
for
was
having
great.
me.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks for listening to Hey Kiddo. If you like what you hear, give us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Learn more about Hey Kiddo at our website, hey-kiddo.com. Have a question for our experts? Email us at hello@hey-kiddo.com.